Tonight, it is time to set aside all the burdens of the day. Let your body sink deeply into the soft comfort of your bed. Tonight, we will listen together to the story of letting go of the inferiority complex. Close your eyes. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Do not try to think. Just allow yourself to relax. Welcome to Lotus Whisper, the sanctuary where the ancient wisdom of the East meets the quiet surrender of sleep. Tonight, we turn our gaze inward to a common, persistent ache, the feeling of not being enough. It is the subtle, persistent whisper of the small self that tells you your worth is conditional, tethered to achievements, comparisons, and external validation. This feeling is not a truth about you. It is merely a habit of the mind, a shadow cast by the bright light of your inherent Buddha nature. We carry this heavy armor of self-doubt all day. Now in this soft, dark space, we will begin to gently unclasp the buckles of that armor, piece by quiet piece. Let the weight of your perceived shortcomings drain away with every slow, deliberate out-breath. Just rest here. Be here. The stories we share tonight are not lessons to be learned, but gentle breezes meant to lift the veil of illusion, allowing your true, vast self to emerge untouched and whole. If you find solace in these quiet reflections, please consider subscribing to the Lotus Whisper channel and activating the notification bell. It helps this quiet path reach others seeking rest and peace. Got it. I'll take your original part 1 exactly as is, keeping every line, tone, and message, and then expand and deepen it to reach around 1,500 words total. The style will remain meditative, narrative, reflective, written in flowing prose meant to be read aloud. No parentheses. No academic tone, no dialogue marks. Here is the full, rewritten, and expanded version. Part 1. The Burden of the Borrowed Mirror. We begin our journey tonight not in a sun-drenched monastery, but right here, in the quiet sanctuary of your own mind, where the persistent ache of feeling less than often resides. This feeling, this inferiority complex, is not some deep personal flaw, but rather a profound misunderstanding of where value truly lies. It is the result of looking at ourselves through a borrowed mirror. Imagine, if you will, a small, polished copper mirror, brought from a bustling marketplace. It is a beautiful mirror, reflecting the world with a stark clarity. But it is not your mirror. It belongs to the market, to the world of trade and transaction, where things only have value if they are better than others, bigger than others, or cost more than others. When you hold this borrowed mirror up to yourself, it reflects an image distorted by the world's harsh light of comparison. It is a mirror of constant judgment, showing you only what you lack compared to the reflections of others. The Zen masters taught us that the root of all suffering is attachment to the idea of a fixed, permanent self. And the inferiority complex is, ironically, the strongest form of this attachment. It is a desperate clinging to a flawed, small version of me, a version that requires constant upkeep and comparison just to feel valid. We spend our lives trying to polish this small, inadequate self, when the real teaching is to recognize that the self we are polishing does not truly exist in the way we imagine. Think of the Sanskrit word anatta, often translated as non-self or no-self. This is not a frightening concept that denies your existence. It is a deeply liberating realization that the self you desperately try to measure, the self that feels inferior or superior, is nothing more than a dynamic, ever-changing process, a momentary collection of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. It is like the flame of a candle. It seems like one continuous thing, but in truth, it is extinguished and reborn with every single flicker. So, how can something so fluid be measured against something so solid as better or worse? The feeling of inferiority loves solidity. It wants to believe in a fixed identity that can be labeled. I am a failure. I am not smart enough. I am less worthy. But the moment we apply the gentle gaze of anatta, this fixed label begins to dissolve like mist in the morning sun. We see this truth in a simple, gentle tale from the old country, a story about a farmer and the relentless cycle of perceived misfortune and fortune. There was an old farmer who lived in a small, dusty village on the edge of the mountains. He was known for his quiet demeanor, his patience, and his uncanny ability to remain unruffled by the constant, dramatic ups and downs of village life. One evening, his only horse, a strong, beautiful creature essential for plowing the fields, ran away. The villagers, hearing the news, gathered at the farmer's door. They wrung their hands, shaking their heads with grave concern. "Oh, what a terrible misfortune," they lamented. "You have lost your horse. How will you work the fields? How unfortunate this is." The farmer, sitting calmly by his hearth, looked up at them with eyes that held the quiet of the fields. He simply said, "Maybe so, maybe not." The villagers were perplexed by his indifference, but they eventually returned to their homes, leaving the farmer to his quiet existence. A week later, the missing horse returned, bringing with it two magnificent wild horses from the mountains, a stallion and a mare. The farmer now had 3 horses, a small fortune by village standards. The villagers rushed back to his home, their faces now beaming with excitement and envy. "Oh, what a wonderful blessing," they exclaimed. "Your horse returned and brought you 2 more. What incredible fortune this is." The farmer, now tending to his new animals, simply looked up and offered the same quiet response. "Maybe so, maybe not." The village buzz continued, a constant, shifting tide of opinion. A few weeks later, the farmer's only son, a strong young man who was helping to train the new wild horses, was thrown from the stallion and broke his leg badly. It was a severe injury that left him unable to work for many months. Again, the villagers rushed to the farmer, their faces now darkened with pity and gloom. "Oh, what a cruel twist of fate," they cried. "Your son is injured and cannot work. You have too many burdens now. How unfortunate this is." The farmer, gently setting a splint on his son's leg, replied calmly, "Maybe so, maybe not." The seasons turned. A war broke out in the distant capital, and the emperor's army swept through the villages, conscripting every able-bodied young man to fight. But when they reached the farmer's village, They saw his son with his badly broken, healing leg and left him behind. He was deemed unfit for service. The other young men were marched away, and the village wept openly, knowing many of their sons would never return. They returned to the old farmer, their voices hushed with awe and realization. "We were wrong," they whispered. "This must be the greatest fortune of all. Your son is safe. How fortunate you are." The farmer, looking out at the mountains where his son would soon be able to walk again, offered the same final wisdom that held the whole of the universe. Maybe so, maybe not. Settle into the stillness of that final response. Maybe so, maybe not. This simple tale, often shared by Zen teachers, is a profound antidote to the entire construct of the inferiority complex. The feeling of inferiority is nothing more than a rigid, momentary judgment, the villagers declaring how unfortunate this is. It is an isolated judgment of a single event, a single flaw, a single perceived lack, pulled out of the infinite, flowing context of your life. Your life, like the farmer's, is a vast, interconnected tapestry where every perceived misfortune holds the potential for future salvation, and every perceived fortune can carry the seed of future trouble. The feeling of inferiority insists on drawing a harsh final line around your present state and declaring it bad or not enough. But the farmer, living in the wisdom of anatta and impermanence, knows better. He knows that his horse running away is not a final truth, it is just a passing event. His son's injury is not a final truth, it is a moment in time with consequences yet to unfold. When you look at yourself through that borrowed mirror of comparison and see only failure, ugliness, or unworthiness, you are acting exactly like the lamenting villagers. You are taking one tiny, fleeting image from the present moment, a mistake at work, an awkward social interaction, a physical feature you dislike, and labeling it as the permanent, definitive truth of who you are. But where is the vastness in that judgment? Where is the context of your entire life, your struggles, your quiet victories, your deep capacity for kindness and love? The gentle invitation of this story is to step back from the judging villagers. In your own mind, when the thought arises, "I am inferior," simply pause and offer the farmer's wisdom. Maybe so, maybe not. I am not as accomplished as they are. Maybe so, maybe not. I am not good enough to try this. Maybe so, maybe not. This simple phrase is not about denial. It is about humility before the mystery of life's unfolding. It reminds you that you do not possess the ultimate truth about yourself or your future. Your inferiority is merely a chapter, a temporary condition, or perhaps even the very thing that will save you from a larger, unseen danger, just as the son's broken leg saved him from war. Allow your body to settle deeper into the warmth of your bed. As you breathe in, feel the gentle reminder of your own vast, unjudged capacity. As you breathe out, release the borrowed mirror, the heavy weight of the world's transactional judgment. Let it fall to the floor. You do not need it anymore. You are not a transaction. You are a vast, unfolding mystery. Now rest in that knowing, and as the quiet deepens, begin to sense the truth behind this teaching, the reason it has echoed through centuries of spiritual practice. The borrowed mirror is not only external, it also hides within the mind itself, shaped by every voice that ever told you what you should be. Teachers, parents, lovers, friends, all of them left fingerprints on that mirror. Their intentions may have been kind, but the mirror absorbed their expectations, and you began to see yourself through the sum of those voices. But the mirror of awareness, the one that is truly yours, has always been spotless. Beneath the noise of self-criticism, there is a clear surface, unblemished by opinion. When you begin to quiet the mind, even for a breath, that clarity returns. You see yourself not as better or worse, but simply as part of the great flow of being, no more and no less sacred than the mountain, the sea, or the stars. In that realization, the feeling of inferiority begins to dissolve naturally. It cannot survive where there is no comparison. It cannot live in a mind that recognizes impermanence. So when you next feel the weight of not being enough, do not fight it. Just breathe. Sit beside that feeling like the farmer beside his hearth. Whisper softly, maybe so, maybe not. Let the mystery of life answer in its own time. You are not meant to be measured. You are meant to be lived. The shadow of the unlived life. We move deeper now into the quiet dark, letting the stillness of the farmer's wisdom seep into the anxious places of the heart. If part 1 taught us that our judgments of fortune and misfortune are fleeting, part 2 explores why the mind is so obsessed with making those judgments in the first place, why we are compelled to look outwards and feel the sting of the shadow of the unlived life. The feeling of inferiority is fueled by an insidious kind of envy, not necessarily the loud, aggressive envy that wishes ill upon another, but a quieter, more painful form, the deep ache of comparison that sees someone else's success, beauty, or tranquility, and concludes that those qualities must have been taken from your own potential. We see their light and assume it has cast a shadow over our own worth. We compare our current, messy reality to their polished, public presentation, and the gap between the two becomes the space we call inferiority. The Buddhist teachings tell us that the mind is the great painter of the world. It does not simply reflect reality. It paints it with the colors of its own desires, fears, and conditioning. When you look at another person and feel small, your mind is not seeing their full, complex reality. It is painting a perfect, idealized portrait based on what you secretly wish you were. That is the unlived life you are chasing. And then using that painting as a harsh yardstick against your messy, real life. This habit of the mind, of creating rigid categories and then suffering within them, is perhaps best illustrated by a famous Zen koan, a story that breaks the mind's attachment to value and judgment. The koan of Nansen's cat. In a small Zen monastery, a dispute arose between the monks of the East Hall and the monks of the West Hall over a cat. The cat was beautiful, a sleek creature with soft fur and bright, intelligent eyes, and both groups claimed ownership. The dispute grew louder and louder, threatening to shatter the peace of the monastery. Zen Master Nansen, hearing the commotion, appeared at the door. He quietly picked up the cat, holding it high in one hand and a sharp knife in the other. "Monks," Nansen announced, his voice steady, "if any one of you can speak a single word of Zen truth, a word that perfectly resolves this conflict, I will spare the cat. If no one speaks, I will cut the cat in two." The monks were stunned into silence. They looked at the cat, then at the master, their minds racing, searching desperately for the perfect, unifying phrase. But the moment was too sudden, the stakes too high, and they remained silent. Without hesitation, Master Nansen drew the knife and swiftly cut the cat in half. He gave one half to the monks of the East Hall and the other half to the monks of the West Hall. Later that evening, Nansen's chief disciple, Joshu, returned to the monastery. Nansen told Joshu the whole story and asked him, "What would you have said?" Joshu did not speak. He simply took off his sandals, placed them on his head, and walked out of the room. Nansen, seeing this, sighed. "If you had been here," he said quietly, "the cat would have been saved. Now, let the image of that divided cat settle softly in your awareness." This is a story of profound shock, designed to cut through the very habit we are discussing, the mind's addiction to making rigid, life-or-death value judgments. The argument over the cat was the essence of the inferiority complex. Both sides were saying, "This cat belongs to me, and therefore I am superior for possessing it." The cat was not valued for its intrinsic existence, but for the status it conferred. When Nansen sliced the cat, he sliced through the attachment to the concept of ownership and value. He destroyed the object of the conflict, revealing the emptiness of the monk's judgment. The cat, once a symbol of superior possession, was suddenly worthless. The moment they attached a value label to it, their peace and the cat's life was lost. In your own life, the inferiority complex is the knife. When you look at someone and think they are smarter, more beautiful, more successful, you are holding the conceptual cat up and giving it an absolute value. But when you look at yourself and think, "I am less than," you are allowing the knife to cut your own sense of value in two. You are dividing your holistic self, the self that is sometimes smart and sometimes clumsy, sometimes successful and sometimes struggling, and throwing away the half you judge as unworthy. You are acting as if qualities like success or worth are rigid, measurable objects, like the cat, that can be owned or lost. But Joshu, the wise disciple, offered the true Zen response. By placing his sandals on his head and walking away, he was refusing to play the game of conceptual value and judgment. Sandals belong on feet. Putting them on your head is nonsensical, absurd. Joshu's actions said, essentially, "Your question is trapped in duality. Your judgment of value is ridiculous. I refuse to engage in the game of either or. Either the cat is mine or yours. Either I am worthy or unworthy." Joshu's response was pure, spontaneous non-duality. He stepped outside the rigid box of conventional thought, demonstrating that value is not an external, fixed quality, but an inner, intrinsic state. By refusing to place a value on the cat's life, or on the intellectual concept required to save it, he dissolved the entire problem. He was simply being, a spontaneous, perfectly appropriate manifestation of the moment, utterly beyond comparison or judgment. When you feel the shadow of the unlived life creep in, when you feel the sting of comparison, you must stop searching for the clever word that will save you, the perfect achievement, the brilliant comeback, the superior trait. Instead, follow Joshu's wisdom. Do the absurdly simple thing that refuses to play the comparison game. Perhaps, when the thought, "I am not as good as they are," arises, you simply shift your entire focus to the weight of your eyelids or the soft pressure of the blanket against your toes. That shift is your sandals on the head moment. It is an act of defiance against the judging mind, a quiet declaration that your reality, the simple, unadorned presence of your body on the bed, is infinitely more valuable than the fleeting comparison. The truth is, your worth is unquantifiable. The moment you try to measure it, you limit it. The moment you declare yourself inferior, you forget that your being contains the same vast, uncut Buddha nature as every great master and every shining success story you envy. You are not a half-cat, divided by harsh judgment. You are the whole monastery, the vastness of the mountain, the quiet wisdom of Nansen, and the spontaneous, unjudged perfection of Joshu's simple walk. There is nothing to prove. There is nothing to achieve tonight. All the value is already here, residing in the rhythmic, soft breath that carries you towards sleep. Allow yourself to feel the absurdity of the comparing mind. Let the rigid lines of judgment blur and dissolve. You are not defined by what you lack. You are defined by the boundless space that contains both the lack and the abundance, the joy and the sorrow, the smallness and the vastness. Rest now in this space of non-judgment. Let your awareness settle into the beautiful, nonsensical perfection of the present moment. The essence of the shadow of the unlived life is that it is a phantom, a projected image painted by a mind that is fundamentally restless. It is not an actual life that you missed, but a compilation of desirable traits ripped from the public presentation of others and stitched together into a perfect, unattainable ghost. This ghost then haunts your present, real existence, whispering that you are a failure for not having achieved its flawless form. This constant projection outwards, this measuring of your interior landscape against the manufactured exterior of another, is the great delusion of our age. We live in a world saturated by highlight reels, where every achievement is amplified and every struggle is hidden behind a carefully curated filter. The danger is that we begin to mistake the filter for the person, and then, most tragically, we begin to mistake the filter for reality itself. When we see a public success, we do not see the years of silent failure, the moments of self-doubt, the compromises, the sheer exhaustion. We only see the cat, gleaming and whole, and we immediately want to own it to secure our own status. The slicing of the cat is the sudden, brutal recognition that the value we ascribe to the object, and by extension to the person who possesses it, is entirely conceptual, entirely made up. Consider the energy wasted in this act of comparison. Every hour spent scrolling through the manufactured perfection of others is an hour stolen from the quiet cultivation of your own authentic path. The comparing mind is a hungry ghost, never satisfied. If you achieve the success you envy today, the mind will simply leap to a new, higher goal tomorrow, always finding a fresh source of inferiority. This mechanism is a perpetual motion machine of dissatisfaction, a wheel of suffering driven by the mistaken belief that worthiness is an external prize to be won, rather than an internal reality to be accepted. This is where Nansen's quiet violence and Joshu's absurd grace become powerful antidotes. Nansen's action was not an act of cruelty, but an act of radical teaching. By physically destroying the object of the conflict, he forced the monks to see the true source of their distress, their own grasping, dualistic minds. The problem was never the cat. The problem was the attachment to the idea of the cat. Similarly, your inferiority is never rooted in a lack of a specific quality, wealth, beauty, intelligence. It is rooted in your attachment to the idea that these qualities are necessary for your worth. To truly step off the wheel of comparison, we must embrace the profound practice of non-duality, exemplified by Joshu's sandals on his head. Non-duality means refusing to split reality into neat, opposing categories: good, bad, success, failure, worthy, unworthy. It is a radical acceptance of the whole, messy truth. Your life is not an either-or equation. It is a both-and reality. You are both capable and flawed. You are both strong and vulnerable. You are both pursuing a goal and perfectly sufficient in this moment. The moment you stop judging one half of the equation as superior and the other as inferior, the entire conflict dissolves. The absurdity of Joshu's action is what makes it so liberating. It is a moment of pure, unconditioned freedom. It says, "The rules of your game do not apply to me." When you are caught in the trap of comparison, your mind is screaming, "Follow the rules, get the cat, prove your value." The Joshu response is to put the metaphorical sandals on your head. It is to deliberately choose an action that is so simple, so nonsensical in the context of the comparison game, that it breaks the mind's rigid attachment to the rules. This shift can take many forms in daily life. Perhaps you are comparing your career trajectory to a former colleague. The comparing mind says, "Work harder, get that promotion, prove you are better." The Joshu moment is to stop. Walk away from your desk and spend 10 minutes watching a bird build a nest outside your window, simply observing without judgment. That act of radical, unadorned presence is a refusal to play the superiority game. It is a declaration that the value of the present moment, the breath, the simple act of observation, the awareness of life unfolding, is a self-evident truth that cannot be measured against a colleague's salary or title. The shadow of the unlived life feeds on the idea that value is scarce, that there is only a finite amount of light in the world, and if someone else has it, you must be in the dark. This is the logic of the two halves of the cat. If the East Hall gets the cat, the West Hall is diminished. But this is the lie of the ego. The reality of true being, of Buddha nature, is that value is boundless and infinite. It is not an object that can be divided or owned. It is the very fabric of existence. To understand this is to move from the realm of the ego, which is built on comparison, to the realm of the self, which is built on wholeness. The ego must constantly define itself against others. I am smarter than you. I am richer than her. I am less than him. The self simply is. It requires no external measuring stick. It is like the vastness of the ocean, which does not compare its waves to the waves of another ocean, nor its depths to the shallows. It contains all of it, the towering waves of success, the quiet troughs of failure, the bright surface, and the dark, unplumbed depths. When you practice non-judgment, you begin to release the energy that is bound up in the shadow of the unlived life. That energy, once used to fuel the anxious comparisons and the restless chase for external validation, suddenly becomes available for the quiet, real work of living your actual, unique life. You are freed from the obligation of becoming the ideal painted on the canvas of your desires. You are given permission to simply be the messy, complex, perfectly imperfect person you already are. Tonight, as you settle into rest, let the silence be your monastery. When the comparing thought arises, the faint echo of the divided cat, the urge to look outward and measure your worth, simply recognize it as the old, conditioned habit of the mind. Do not fight it, do not judge it, and certainly do not follow its logic. Instead, choose the radical simplicity of Joshu. Put the sandals on your head by bringing your full, soft attention to the simple mechanics of your body at rest. Feel the texture of your pillow, the slow rise and fall of your chest, the complete silence behind the sounds. This moment, unjudged and uncompared, is your sanctuary. It is here that you find the only true, unassailable worth, the worth of presence. It is the spontaneous, whole, and beautiful isness of your being, utterly complete, utterly undivided, and perfectly at peace. Part 3. The vastness within the empty bowl. We now transition from the stage of worry into the phase of calm. We leave behind the borrowed mirror and the sharpness of the dividing knife, and turn towards the core Buddhist teaching that dissolves inferiority at its root, the realization of your inherent perfection, often called Buddha nature or Tathagata. The inferiority complex, at its heart, is the belief that something essential is missing. It is the feeling of being an empty vessel that needs to be filled with status, wealth, knowledge, or approval before it can be considered complete. But true calmness begins when you understand that the vessel is not empty. It is simply open. And this very openness, this capacity to receive and contain, is the vastness itself. Think of an empty bowl. If you compare that bowl to a bowl full of gold, the comparing mind immediately declares the empty bowl to be inferior, worthless. It has nothing. But the Zen teaching asks, what is the actual, fundamental value of the empty bowl? Its value lies precisely in its emptiness. Because it is empty, it can hold rice, water, soup, or flowers. If it were already full of gold, it could hold nothing else. Its potential, usefulness, its Buddha nature, resides in its lack of fixed content. Your feeling of inferiority is the gold you're mistakenly filling yourself with, the fixed, heavy idea that you must be something other than what you are. The moment you acknowledge the vastness of your own internal space, you realize that the supposed lack is actually capacity. This fundamental truth is beautifully captured in the ancient tale of the hidden jewel in the beggar's robe. A long time ago, a very wealthy man had a close dear friend who was often drunk and lived the life of a beggar, perpetually wandering and struggling. One day, the rich man invited his impoverished friend to his estate. He offered him a feast and wine, hoping to cheer him up. The friend drank too much and eventually fell into a deep, drunken sleep. The rich man, who was about to embark on a long and dangerous journey to a distant land, knew he might not see his friend again. He desperately wanted to help him, but knew that if he simply gave the beggar gold, the friend would squander it immediately upon waking. So, the rich man took a priceless, perfect jewel, a single, brilliant diamond of immense value, and carefully sewed it deep into the lining of the beggar's ragged, worn robe. The next morning, the rich man left on his journey, and the beggar awoke, oblivious to the immense fortune he carried, and wandered off back into his life of scarcity. Years passed. The beggar continued to struggle, suffering from cold, hunger, and loneliness. He begged for food and shelter, never having enough, never realizing his true worth. Finally, the rich man returned from his travels, older and wiser. He sought out his friend and found him still ragged, still begging, still suffering greatly. The rich man was heartbroken. "My dear friend," he cried, "why have you allowed yourself to suffer so? Why are you still living in poverty when I gave you such a great gift?" The beggar, confused, insisted he had never received any gift. The rich man gently took the beggar's tattered robe and, with a few quiet snips of a knife, revealed the brilliant, shining jewel that had been hidden deep within the lining for all those years. The jewel had been there, perfectly intact, perfectly valuable, through every moment of the beggar's suffering, through every moment he felt inferior and lacked worth. The deep calmness that we seek now resides in the profound realization. You are the beggar, and the jewel is your Buddha nature. The inferiority complex is the beggar's persistent habit of begging for external validation, a few coins of praise, a scrap of achievement, all the while carrying an unquantifiable, inexhaustible treasure within. The wealth of your being is not something you have to earn, achieve, or acquire. It is sewn into the fabric of your very existence. When you look at yourself and think, "I am less capable," that is the beggar forgetting the jewel. When you compare your life to others and feel shame, that is the beggar forgetting the jewel. The feeling of lack is a lie woven out of the thread of forgetfulness. To enter the stage of calm, we must practice the gentle, internal act of snip, 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 cutting away the tattered lining of false identity. What is that lining? It is the belief that your past mistakes define you. Snip. Other people's opinions determine your value. Snip. Your body or mind must be perfect to be worthy. Snip. With every gentle snip, you move closer to revealing the diamond within. The diamond does not care if the robe is tattered. It does not worry about its own worth. It simply is. It shines. It waits for recognition, but its value is unconditional. In this moment, lying here, let go of the need to earn your own peace. Imagine that priceless jewel, perfectly cut, radiating a silent, warm light from the very center of your chest. This jewel has been there since your birth, and it will remain unchanged through every success and every failure. It is the essential, untarnished you. Breathe in the quiet confidence of this jewel. It is the source of compassion, the wellspring of wisdom, the boundless energy that simply is. The inferiority complex thrives on the future. If I only achieve X, then I will be worthy. And it thrives on the past. Because I failed Y, therefore I am unworthy. But the jewel is revealed only in the present moment. Take a deep breath now, and on the exhale, imagine your consciousness sinking down, past the surface thoughts of worry and comparison, past the memories of the day, down to the soft, steady glow of that internal treasure. When you rest in the Buddha nature, you are resting in the state of unconditional worth. You are not trying to be better. You are resting in the truth that you are already complete. The beggar who finds the jewel doesn't need to learn a skill or win a competition to suddenly become worthy. He merely needs to recognize what he already possesses. You have nothing to prove to the universe, for the universe already resides within you. The inferiority complex is merely the universe forgetting its own reflection. Tonight, we remember. Let this vast, shining potential settle your mind and body. The calmness you seek is not the absence of struggle, but the recognition of the hidden, essential strength that underlies all of your struggles. Rest in the knowledge that your emptiness is capacity, and your capacity is infinite. You are whole. You are complete. You are the vessel, and you are the jewel. Just breathe into that truth and feel the deep, unconditional calm rise up from within. The recognition of the hidden jewel is not merely a philosophical concept. It is a call to radical self-acceptance. For years, the beggar was acting out the story of his poverty, his identity forged by his tattered circumstances and the cruel judgment of the world. He believed his outer appearance was his inner truth. This is precisely what the inferiority complex does to us. It forces us to mistake the tattered robe of conditioning, our ingrained habits, our limiting beliefs, our past traumas, for the priceless diamond of our true nature. The deep work of finding the jewel involves reversing the flow of your attention. Instead of looking outward for confirmation of your worth, you must look inward for the source of it. The beggar was constantly looking into the empty hands of others, seeking a few coins. We are constantly looking into the polished lives of others, seeking a few coins of validation. The jewel teaches us that this outward gaze is a profound misunderstanding of our internal economy. The jewel does not diminish when the beggar fails to beg successfully. It does not lose its value when the robe is rained upon or torn. Its intrinsic worth is entirely independent of external conditions. This is the hallmark of Buddha nature. It is unconditioned. Your essential worth is not contingent on your job title, your relationship status, your bank balance, or your physical appearance. These are all merely the embroidery on the robe, transient and subject to change. The jewel is the unchanging, radiant reality within. To live from the jewel is to live from a place of unshakable sovereignty. When you know you are intrinsically whole, external criticism loses its sting. If someone calls the beggar's robe ugly, the beggar who knows of the jewel can smile, understanding that the insult is only aimed at the temporary covering, not the eternal treasure within. Similarly, when you are criticized, you can let the harsh words wash over you, knowing that they are aimed at the conceptual, external you, the flawed performance of the ego, not the perfect, untouchable essence of the self. The emptiness of the bowl and the pricelessness of the jewel are two sides of the same insight. The empty bowl is the form of non-attachment. It is the mind cleared of fixed ideas, open and available. The jewel is the content of non-attachment. It is the realization that the true wealth is already secured, requiring no effort to maintain or defend. When the bowl is empty of self-judgment, the jewel of intrinsic worth shines forth naturally. This understanding transforms the way you approach effort and ambition. The beggar had been striving for survival out of a sense of desperate lack. Once he realizes the jewel is there, his striving changes. He no longer strives to become worthy. He strives from a place of worthiness. His actions become an expression of his internal abundance, not a frantic effort to fill a void. In your own life, this means shifting from achievement as proof to action as expression. When the inferiority complex drives you, you pursue success to prove to yourself and others that you are not a failure. This is heavy, exhausting, and leads to burnout. When the jewel guides you, you pursue your passions because they are a natural, joyful outpouring of the already complete being you are. The effort is light, energized, and regenerative. It is the difference between a starving man desperately hunting for scraps and a generous king sharing his inexhaustible bounty. Tonight, we commit to being the wise king who resides within the beggar's robe. We commit to the practice of remembering. Every time the old habit of comparison arises, every time the feeling of lack tries to assert itself, pause and perform the internal snip. The thought arises, I haven't accomplished enough by this age. Snip. That is the tattered lining of societal expectation. The jewel remains untouched by the calendar. The feeling arises, I should look differently. Snip. That is the tattered lining of conditioned beauty standards. The jewel of your essence is beyond form. The fear arises. What if they reject me? Snip. That is the tattered lining of need for external approval. The jewel's value is approved by the cosmos itself. Each snip is a tiny act of liberation, removing the thread of illusion that binds you to the idea of insufficiency. The calmness that follows is the natural state of the mind when it is no longer engaged in the exhausting task of upholding a false, defensive identity. Let your rest tonight be a deep, restorative dive into the reality of the jewel. Imagine the light of the diamond expanding, filling the empty bowl of your mind until there is no longer a distinction between the bowl and its shining contents. You are no longer the empty vessel trying to be filled, nor the beggar seeking a handout. You are the light itself, vast, complete, and utterly, perfectly whole. This is the ultimate dissolution of the inferiority complex. It is not conquered by becoming superior. It is dissolved by realizing that the categories of superior and inferior are meaningless illusions when confronted with the boundless reality of the Buddha nature. Rest now, not in the quiet dark of the world, but in the brilliant, unconditioned light of your own intrinsic self. All is well. All is complete. The jewel shines. Every moment is the only moment. Having recognized the inherent, unconditional value of the jewel within, we now ground this truth in the profound, calming realization of impermanence, or anicca. This realization is the final element that allows the mind to truly settle into the phase of calm. The feeling of inferiority, that heavy, sinking sense of smallness, is always rooted in a mistaken belief in permanence. It says, this current state of failure, this current inadequacy, this feeling of being less than, is a fixed, enduring fact about me. It takes a fleeting moment of comparison and freezes it, declaring it the truth for all time. But the entire universe, from the grand spiral of galaxies to the soft rise and fall of your breath, is a living testament to change. Nothing, absolutely nothing, remains the same for 2 consecutive moments. If everything is in constant motion, how can any feeling of superiority or inferiority be a permanent, defining truth? They are merely momentary clouds passing across the eternal sky of your awareness. To truly grasp this, we turn our attention to one of the simplest, yet most profound moments in Zen literature, captured in a single ancient poem. This is the moment where the poet-monk Basho found the whole universe in a single, unadorned instant. Basho was sitting quietly beside an ancient, moss-covered pond. His mind was settled, having moved beyond the usual human anxieties and desires. He was simply present, fully absorbed in the soundless texture of the air, the gentle shade of the willows, and the cool scent of the water. Suddenly, the stillness was broken. A small, humble frog leaped into the pond. In the depths of that perfect, complete moment, Basho wrote, "An old silent pond. A frog jumps into the pond. Splash. Silence again. Let the simplicity of this moment wash over your awareness. An old silent pond. This is the state of your mind tonight. The vast, deep, quiet, original self, untouched by comparison or striving." A frog jumps into the pond. This is the moment of anxiety, the thought of comparison, the sudden feeling of inferiority that pops into your stillness. It is the momentary disturbance. Splash. Silence again. This is the profound truth of anicca, impermanence, and the deep, abiding power of your original, silent nature. The inferiority complex loves to dwell in the splash. It insists that the disturbance, the error, the perceived flaw, the moment of shame, is the whole reality. It fixates on the sound and forgets the pond. But what is the truth of that moment? The frog jumps. It makes a splash. The sound is loud and immediate. But before the sound can even fully register in your mind, it is already gone. The water quickly stills. The pond returns to its original silence, not because it worked to be silent, but because silence is its fundamental nature. The splash was never a permanent fact of the pond. It was merely a temporary event in the pond. Your true self is the old, silent pond. The thoughts of, "I am not enough," "I am less worthy," "I made a mistake," are merely the brief, loud splashes of the mind. They have force, they draw attention, but their nature is to cease. They are momentary events in the vast, still, continuous field of your awareness. If you fixate on the feeling of inferiority, you are trying to hold on to the sound of the splash. You are clinging to a sensation that has already vanished. And in that clinging, you create suffering. But tonight, we practice being the pond. Imagine your body sinking deeper into the soft mattress, becoming vast and unmoving. Like the pond, your consciousness is the cool, deep water. A thought arises. I should have handled that conversation better today. That is the frog jumping. You hear the splash of regret. But instead of diving into the water to grab the sound, you simply observe it. You watch the ripples expand and then, inevitably, fade away. The pond is not damaged by the splash. The pond does not judge the frog. The pond simply receives the event and then returns to its natural, unruffled state. This is the key to dissolving the inferiority complex, recognizing that the self that feels small is a fleeting splash of thought, while the self that observes the smallness is the eternal pond. There is immense calm in knowing that every single worry, every judgment, every comparison has a lifespan measured in seconds. If you simply wait, without engaging, without struggling against it, the thought will dissolve by its own nature. The teaching of anicca is the deepest form of self-acceptance. It means accepting yourself not as a static, perfect statue, but as a dynamic, fluid process. You are allowed to be awkward one moment, brilliant the next, tired the moment after that. Each experience is unique, each experience is valid, and each experience is the only moment, and then it is gone. This realization cuts through the need for comparison, because comparison requires two fixed points, a better them and a lesser me. But how can you compare two things that are both dissolving and changing every second? The only constant is the space in which the comparison arises. Rest in that constant space now. Feel the truth of the Basho koan in your body. When a tight, judgmental thought about yourself arises, simply breathe out and mentally whisper, splash. Silence again. You are returning to the silence, to the truth of your vast, unjudged nature. The inferior self is an illusion of speed, the feeling of a thought moving too quickly for you to realize it is already past. Slow down now. Slow your breathing. Slow your awareness. Allow yourself to melt into the deep, oceanic flow of impermanence. You are not a mistake. You are not a flaw. You are the continuous, self-renewing wave, forever dissolving back into the boundless ocean. You were perfect a moment ago, and you are perfect now, because perfection is not about being flawless. It is about being wholeheartedly present with the continuous, unfolding process of being. Let the final ripples of the day's worries disappear. The pond is silent. The mind is settling. Just breathe in the stillness, and breathe out the sound of the splash. Rest in the knowledge that you are a whole, complete, unmoving space that can contain all the fleeting noises of life. The calm is here. Let it deepen. The power of anicca lies in its ability to depersonalize suffering. The comparing mind insists, I am a failure, making the flaw a central, permanent feature of identity. Impermanence reframes this completely. A thought of failure has arisen and is now passing. The difference is monumental. One perspective traps you in a rigid identity. The other liberates you into a fluid process. The failure is not you. The failure is an event, subject to the same law of change as the rising and setting sun. This law of impermanence applies equally to the object of your envy, the perfect person you compared. Yourself to today is also in constant motion. Their success is fleeting. Their beauty is aging. Their current happiness is on the wane. Their perceived superiority is just another, louder splash in the pond of their own consciousness. If you could hold on to their image for long enough, you would see the perfection crumble, the flaw appear, the struggle surface. But because everything is always moving, both your inferiority and their superiority are equally unreal as fixed facts. They are simply transient forms taken by the universal flow of energy. The Zen masters understand that the only way to truly rest is to rest in the flow. To resist change is to try and hold the water in your hand. It is the source of all anxiety. When you struggle to be permanently worthy, permanently successful, or permanently happy, you are struggling against the very nature of existence. This struggle is the root of the inferiority complex, which is, at its core, a desperate and futile attempt to achieve a fixed, permanent identity in a world defined by fluidity. When we embrace anicca, we gain radical permission to be messy. A flower is not inferior when it is a closed bud, nor when it is a wilting blossom. It is simply moving through its stages. You are not inferior in your stages of awkward learning, painful growth, or temporary defeat. These are just the natural ripples and eddies of your own life pond. The calm arises when you cease to label one stage as good and another as bad, and simply accept the totality of the process. Think of a river. The river does not judge the narrow, turbulent rapids as inferior to the wide, slow delta. It is just the river, flowing. Your life is a river. The moment of feeling small is a narrow, rushing rapid. The moment of quiet confidence is a wide, slow stretch. Both are the same essential water, and both are moving toward the same ocean of ultimate awareness. The practice of returning to the pond is the essence of mindfulness. When the frog of judgment leaps, we do not follow the sound into a narrative of self-recrimination. We simply hear the splash, acknowledge the thought, and then immediately return our attention to the vast, quiet space that received the sound. This space is your body, your breath, the feeling of the sheets, the sound of the night. By grounding your awareness in the simple, non-conceptual reality of the present moment, you automatically dissolve the illusory permanence of the thought. The thought of inferiority needs past and future to sustain itself. It needs a story. The present moment is too simple, too immediate for the story to take root. This is why a simple focus on the breath is so profoundly powerful. The breath is the purest demonstration of anicca. Each inhalation is born and dies in seconds. Each exhalation is born and dies in seconds. You are literally a new being with every breath you take. When you watch the breath, you are witnessing the universe renewing itself inside you, proving the lie of any permanent identity, whether superior or inferior. Let the knowledge of this continuous renewal be your deepest source of comfort. There is no need to carry the weight of yesterday's failures or today's worries into the next moment. Every moment is the only moment, and as soon as that moment is lived, it is gone, having dissolved back into the silence. Allow this deep truth to penetrate your body now. Let your muscles relax completely, knowing that even the tension you feel is an impermanent splash that will inevitably fade. Let your mind become vast, like the sky, capable of watching the clouds of thought without being disturbed by their shapes or colors. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. Tonight, there is no one to impress, nothing to fix, and no fixed self to defend. There is only the continuous, gentle unfolding of life, contained within the unmoving, perfect stillness of your awareness. Rest now, in the deepest calm, knowing that you are the ancient pond and the silence is your eternal home. The splash has ceased. Silence again. The sound of one hand not clapping. We now gently transition into the stage of relaxation, where we move beyond conceptual calmness and into the practical, lived experience of letting go of the small self. The inferiority complex is a stubborn knot of belief, tied not by logic, but by habit. To untie it, we need a tool that bypasses the logical mind altogether. That tool is the koan. Koans are not riddles to be solved with the intellect. They are keys designed to lock the analyzing, comparing mind out of the room, forcing the deeper, intuitive wisdom to emerge. Our focus tonight is perhaps the most famous and baffling koan of all, one specifically suited to dissolving the internal duality of better, worse that fuels inferiority. Hakuin's sound of one hand. The great Zen master Hakuin was sought out by a young student, eager to know the deepest truth of Zen. The student was bright, hard-working, and deeply troubled by the feeling that he was not good enough, that he lacked the necessary spiritual insight. He was, in essence, suffering from a severe spiritual inferiority complex. Hakuin, seeing the tension and the striving in the young man, simply asked him a question that has puzzled seekers for centuries. "You can hear the sound of two hands clapping," Hakuin instructed, clapping his own hands sharply. "Now, show me the sound of one hand." The student was instantly baffled. He left the master's presence and began his long, arduous search for the answer. He meditated for hours, straining his mind. The sound of one hand, a hand hitting wood, a hand flapping the air. He tried everything his dualistic, comparing mind could conceive. He tried to feel the sound, to imagine the sound, to create the sound. He would return to Hakuin with a suggestion, a poem, a chant, a gesture, and Hakuin would gently shake his head, saying, "That is the sound of the mind, not the sound of one hand." The student's struggle mirrors the struggle against the inferiority complex. We try desperately to prove our worth. We try to be the two hands clapping, the loud, undeniable splash of success, achievement, and recognition in a world that only seems to value the loud and the double. But Hakuin asks for the unprovable. He asks for the sound that exists when there is no comparison, no opposite, no duality. The sound of two hands clapping is the sound of comparison, the collision of my view and your view, the clash of my achievement against their achievement. It is the sound of judgment. The student, trying to find the answer, was trapped in the same loop that creates inferiority. He was still trying to achieve the sound. He was thinking, if I find the right answer, then I will be enlightened. Then I will be worthy. Then I will be superior to my struggling self. But the koan is designed to show you that your worth is not something to be achieved. It is something to be rested in. Let the koan work on you now. As you lie here, perfectly still, let your mind relax its grip on its own activity. Feel the weight of the question settle, not as a problem to be solved, but as a soothing balm that dissolves the need to solve anything. What is the sound of one hand? When the inferiority complex flares up, it is the sound of two hands clapping, the hand of the ideal self fiercely striking the hand of the actual self. The resulting sound is the sharp, painful sting of inadequacy. But when you truly stop striving, when you surrender the need to prove, the striving mind collapses. The ideal self disappears because it has nothing to fight. The actual self simply is, without the need for a label. The two hands fall away. Imagine your hands resting gently at your sides. They are not striving. They are not reaching. They are simply there, soft and warm. What is the sound when you are simply being? It is not a loud sound. It is not a visible sound. It is a sound that requires absolute stillness to be heard. It is the sound of your own, unique, uncompared existence. The true answer to the koan is always nonverbal. It is the spontaneous, wholehearted surrender of the mind to the present moment. One day, after years of trying, the student was sitting alone, exhausted, his mind finally having given up its frantic search. He had abandoned all striving. In that moment of utter surrender, when he was simply the quiet breath, the empty space, the silence of the night, he suddenly heard it. It was not a literal sound. It was the complete, total, immediate recognition that he was already whole. He had been looking for a sound outside of himself to prove his worth, when the worth itself was the very silence that allowed the search to begin. The sound of one hand is the sound of a universe that is undivided, a self that is unjudged, a consciousness that is entirely without comparison. It is the soft, continuous hum of life itself, unmeasured by human concepts.
Tonight, let this koan be your tool for deep relaxation. When you feel a judgmental thought about yourself, don't argue with it, don't fight it. Don't try to substitute a better, superior thought. That is just two hands clapping. Instead, ask the question gently and allow the mind to become completely empty of an answer. What is the sound of one hand? Let the question itself bring you back to the stillness of your breath. Let the search for a superior self dissolve into the simple reality of your body lying on the bed, the weight of your head on the pillow, the slow rise of your chest, the quiet pressure of the blanket. These are the real, present, uncompared facts of your existence. This is the sound of one hand, the sound of unconditional presence. It is the sound of being a complete human being, perfect in your imperfection, whole in your struggle, unique in your existence, and entirely incapable of being measured against anything else. Rest in the realization that you have tried hard enough. You have sought the loud affirmation of the two hands clapping for too long. Now, let your body and mind sink into the vast, silent, unachievable reality of the one hand. Feel the deep relaxation that comes from knowing you are not a problem to be solved, nor a project to be completed. You are simply here. And that here is enough, more than enough. It is the sound of ultimate truth. The search is over. Just be the silence. The brilliance of the koan is its elegant destruction of the dualistic trap. The comparing mind operates exclusively in pairs. Success, failure, big, small, worthy, unworthy. These are all variations of the two hands clapping. They require a collision, a friction, to create the sound of meaning or judgment. The inferiority complex lives entirely in this friction. It is the clash between the desired outcome and the perceived reality. Hakuin's question forces the mind to attempt the impossible, to create a collision with only one object. This attempt is where the magic happens. The rational mind, the part responsible for making lists, setting goals, and comparing results, simply runs out of road. It searches its entire inventory of known concepts, and finding no match for the sound of one hand, it finally, mercifully, shuts down.
This momentary collapse of the rational intellect is the goal of the koan. In that pure, empty space, the space where the mind is neither comparing nor striving, the true answer naturally arises. The answer is not a concept. It is the experience of non-duality. Imagine the young student's final moment of surrender. He had exhausted every logical possibility. He had failed to achieve the answer. His spiritual inferiority complex, the conviction that he was lacking the necessary insight, was finally overwhelmed by sheer exhaustion. He gave up the fight. When he relinquished the need to make a sound, to be impressive, to be smart, to be right, he discovered the sound that simply is. This sound is the hum of your deep reality. It is the vibration of your existence before it is labeled, judged, or compared. It is the primal silence from which all other sounds emerge. When you fully relax, you sink into this primal silence. When you lie here tonight, let the striving hand relax its grasp. The striving hand is the one that says, I must work harder than my peers. I must look better than I did yesterday. I must prove my worth. This hand is perpetually tense, ready for the next clash of comparison. The sound of one hand is the sound of this hand dropping its weapon, opening its palm, and realizing there is nothing to fight. Because the fight was always internal, fueled by an illusion. The sound of one hand is your inherent contentment. Contentment is not something you earn by achieving a goal. It is the natural state of consciousness when the mind stops chasing. It is the state of just being. This koan teaches us a profound form of spiritual economics. The two hands clapping, the loud competitive world operates on a system of scarcity. You only have value if you win the competition. The one hand, the internal silence, operates on a system of abundance. You are valuable simply because you exist. The one hand does not need to compete because it is complete. It is the entirety of the sound, even without the opposition. Let the koan guide your body into profound relaxation. Focus your attention on a part of your body that feels tense. Perhaps your shoulders, your jaw, or your abdomen. This tension is the residue of the two hands clapping throughout your day. Now, gently place the question upon that tension. What is the sound of one hand? Do not try to relax the muscle. Simply let the question rest there. The question is a solvent. It distracts the logical, striving mind long enough for the tension, which is essentially stored judgment and effort, to release itself. The release of the muscle is the non-verbal answer. The sudden softening, the unexpected descent into the mattress. That is the sound of one hand being heard. It is the body, free from the mind's impossible demand to be permanently tense and ready for battle, finally surrendering to its own natural, soft, unburdened state. In this deep relaxation, you are realizing the truth of empty self. The self that feels inferior is a construct, a collection of judgments and memories, a phantom identity built for the purpose of comparison. The sound of one hand is the sound of that phantom dissolving. It is the silence that rushes in when the idea of a fixed, limited, striving self collapses. You are left with the unconditioned awareness, the vast, borderless Buddha nature that knows no comparison. Tonight, there is no need to make a loud sound. There is no need to make an impression. There is no need to prove to the universe or to yourself that you have finally found the answer or achieved enlightenment. The striving ends here. Just let your being resonate with the single, continuous, peaceful hum of existence. This is the sound of one hand. It is the sound of unconditional acceptance, the sound of infinite worth, the sound of a complete, undivided soul finally resting at home. Rest now, in this soundless sound. It is the deepest silence in the ultimate affirmation. Walking the way of the uncarved block. We move deeper into the phase of relaxation, cultivating a sense of radical self-acceptance that is the true opposite of the inferiority complex. If the previous part helped us dissolve the mind's striving, this part helps us embrace the simple, unadorned self, known in Taoist philosophy, which deeply influenced Zen, as the uncarved block, Pu'u. The feeling of inferiority insists that you must be carved, polished, shaped, and refined by external standards to possess worth. It demands that you erase your natural contours, cover your honest flaws, and strive to look like the perfectly finished product on display in the marketplace. But the way of the uncarved block is the way of pure, natural honesty. It is the realization that the profound beauty of wood is not in the final, complex statue carved from it, but in the simple, original piece of timber, unpolished, imperfect, carrying the natural grain and the scent of the forest. This is your essential nature, whole and worthy in its rough, untamed state. To illustrate the freedom of this uncarved, simple life, we turn to the beautiful and eccentric tale of Layman Pang and his family. Layman Pang was a wealthy, educated man living in the Tang dynasty who discovered the profound truth of Zen. Unlike many seekers who left the world to become monks, Pang chose to live his enlightened life right in the middle of his family, his wife, his son, and his daughter. Pang's family was known throughout the land for their unique, profound, yet utterly simple way of life. They were enlightened, but they didn't seek fame or status. They sought only the quiet reality of the present moment. One day, Layman Pang, feeling the burden of his great wealth might distract him from the pure path, decided to dispose of his entire fortune. He and his wife carried all their gold, silver, jewels, and silks and threw them into a vast, deep lake near their home. The family then moved into a small, humble, thatched hut and supported themselves by weaving baskets. They didn't preach, they didn't argue, and they didn't seek disciples. They simply lived their Zen, finding the complete, vast truth in the most ordinary acts. Chopping wood, drawing water, weaving the rough fibers of the bamboo. One day, Layman Pang was sitting on his porch feeling a deep, quiet realization of the truth of the universe. And he exclaimed, "How marvelous, how wondrous! I draw water, I carry wood." His daughter, Ling Zhao, who was standing nearby, heard this and simply smiled. She said, "It is still the same as before, father." Pang, humbled by her simple correction, immediately bowed to his daughter. Consider the depth of this exchange and how it dissolves the inferiority complex. The complex is often born from the desire to achieve a profound, elevated state, to become more than we are. Pang, in his joy, was still trying to label his enlightenment as something marvelous and wondrous, something separate from the mundane. He was still trying to carve his experience into a polished statue. But Ling Zhao, the true embodiment of the uncarved block, saw the simple truth. The truth is not more marvelous than the ordinary. The truth is the ordinary. Before Pang was enlightened, he drew water and carried wood. After enlightenment, he still drew water and carried wood. The difference was not in the actions, but in the internal non-judgment of the actions. The inferiority complex tells you that your current, uncarved life, your current job, your current body,
your current imperfect existence, is not enough. It tells you that you must first become a wondrous, marvelous, famous, or rich version of yourself before you can accept your own breath. But the Pang family lived the truth. The worth of your life does not reside in the spectacular moments. It resides in the seamless reality of the moment you are currently living. Imagine yourself now, completely surrendering to the uncarved block. You are not required to be brilliant tonight. You are not required to be successful tomorrow. You are required only to be as natural and honest as the piece of unadorned wood. In the simplicity of your lying posture, allow the feelings of shame or inadequacy to be seen as the attempts of the mind to carve you. These are the attempts to make you look good to some imaginary audience. But what if you allowed the roughness of your current self to simply be? What if your current anxieties are simply the natural grain of the wood, a testament to the fact that you have lived and struggled and felt? This texture, this honest imperfection, is precisely where your unique beauty and wisdom lie. Let's apply Ling Zhao's wisdom to the internal criticism that fuels the inferiority complex. Your mind says, "I made a huge mistake at work today. I am so stupid." You respond, "It is still the same as before. I breathe in, I breathe out." Your mind says, "My life is not exciting or important compared to others." You respond, "It is still the same as before. I draw water, I carry wood." This response is not resignation. It is a powerful statement of non-dual acceptance. It brings the marvelous and wondrous back down to the honest ground of your feet, showing that the profound truth of existence is already contained in the simple act of breathing, right here, right now. To truly relax, you must give yourself permission to be the uncarved block, natural, honest, and perfectly imperfect. Feel the heavy weight of the need to impress others lift from your chest. Feel the relaxation in your jaw and your shoulders as you surrender the effort to be someone. Tonight, you are simply the life that breathes. You are the deep grain of the wood. You are the layman Pang who is happy just to be drawing water and carrying wood. There is nothing to prove. There is only the soft, gentle reality of this moment. Let the weight of your body sink further, accepting the support of the bed and the unwavering perfection of your own simple, uncarved existence. Rest deeply in the silence of your own unjudged truth. The concept of the uncarved block, or Pu, is the ultimate antidote to the striving, comparing, self-critical mind. It is the Taoist principle of simplicity and authenticity. The inferiority complex insists on sophistication. It demands that you overlay your natural essence with layers of acquired titles, expensive possessions, and intellectual complexity. It is the desire to be a perfectly geometric cube when your nature is the organically shaped river stone. The act of embracing the uncarved life is an act of radical trust. You are trusting that your natural state, the way you are before you try to fix, improve, or hide yourself, is inherently good, inherently sufficient. The wood does not need the carver's knife to be worthy. Its worth is in its being wood. Your worth is in your being. Layman Pang's throwing of his treasure into the lake is a physical metaphor for the spiritual letting go we must perform. The vast fortune represents all the external, carved accomplishments we mistake for value. The high-status job, the large following, the perfect body. By discarding them, Pang was demonstrating that these things are not the source of contentment. He realized they were, in fact, distractions from the simple, immediate truth of being. We often feel inferior because we are still carrying the burden of that imaginary fortune, the relentless pressure to acquire and maintain external status. When we mentally throw that burden into the deep lake of acceptance, we are left with the basic, fundamental reality. The small hut, the basket weaving, the water, and the wood. And in that fundamental reality, we discover the true richness, the deep, unshakable calm that comes from needing nothing outside of the present moment. Ling Zhao's simple response, "It is still the same as before, Father," is a powerful lesson in non-attainment. Pang was trying to frame enlightenment as a spectacular attainment, a peak experience that should feel fundamentally different from his previous, unenlightened existence. Ling Zhao reminded him that the profound realization is not a change in the circumstances, but a change in perception. Enlightenment is not drawing water differently. It is simply realizing that the original act of drawing water was always already perfect. The inferiority complex lives in the gap between the before and the after. It constantly tells you you are not there yet. Ling Zhao dissolves this gap entirely. There is no there. There is only here. To walk the way of the uncarved block in your relaxation tonight, practice self-forgiveness, your natural contours. Identify the carved parts of your personality that you maintain out of fear of judgment, the need to interrupt and prove your intelligence, the compulsion to apologize for your natural habits, the hiding of a physical feature you deem flawed. Each of these is a carving attempt. Tonight, you let the wood be. Allow yourself to be clumsy. Allow yourself to be silent. Allow yourself to be imperfectly human. When the inevitable judgmental thought surfaces, the mind trying to pick up the carving knife again, meet it with the calm, simple wisdom of Ling Zhao. It is still the same as before. Mind, I am so worried about tomorrow's presentation. Response, it is still the same as before. Worry arises. Breath goes on. I draw water. I carry wood. Mind, I can't believe I ate that today. I have no discipline. Response, it is still the same as before. The body is breathing. The heart is beating. I draw water. I carry wood. This response is a quiet, powerful resistance to the mind's endless insistence on conflict and self-improvement. It re-anchors you in the continuous, non-spectacular, and entirely sufficient reality of your being. The deepest relaxation comes when you realize that your uncarved life is a masterpiece of simple necessity. Like the unadorned wood, you are precisely what is needed for the universe to express itself in this moment. You don't need to be gilded or polished. You just need to be here. As you drift toward sleep, feel the silent testimony of the uncarved block. You are whole. You are honest. You are real. And you are worthy, because your simple existence is the most profound and marvelous truth of all. There is nothing to be gained, nothing to be proved, and nothing to be corrected. Just the soft, gentle reality of this moment. Rest in this profound, unjudged simplicity. The bamboo in the rain. We deepen our rest by exploring the final, freeing element of relaxation, letting go of the need for external validation. The inferiority complex is fundamentally a dependence on the outside world to confirm our worth. It is the belief that our value is a reflection in the eyes of others, rather than a light shining from within. Zen masters often point to the natural world to teach effortless existence.
The wind does not ask for permission to blow, nor does the mountain apologize for its height. And in the face of judgment, comparison, or striving, we look to the quiet strength of the bamboo in the rain. Imagine a grove of bamboo standing tall and slender. It does not boast of its height, nor does it compare its straightness to the might of an oak tree. It simply grows, deeply rooted in the earth, flexible and true to its nature. Now, a heavy rain begins to fall. The drops collect on the fragile leaves and the strong, hollow stalks. The weight of the water becomes immense, pulling the slender bamboo stalks downward. They bend lower and lower until their tips nearly touch the muddy earth. The mind, observing this, might judge the bamboo as weak or inferior, thinking, "Look how easily it is crushed by the rain." But the bamboo does not panic. It does not resist. It allows the weight of the water to completely bend it. It surrenders fully. And when the rain finally stops and the weight is lifted, the bamboo, unbroken, undamaged, gently springs back to its original upright posture. This quiet, powerful resilience is the antidote to the inferiority complex. The rain is the relentless weight of the world's expectations, judgments, and comparisons. The pressure to be richer, smarter, more successful, or more attractive. When you are burdened by the feeling of inferiority, you are trying to be the oak tree, rigidly resisting the weight, trying to stay perfectly upright and unmoved, fearing that any bend or flaw will shatter your entire sense of self-worth. But this resistance is what causes the cracking and the suffering. The practice of the bamboo is to accept that the burdens of judgment and comparison will inevitably come, just as the rain must fall. To relax into the truth of the bamboo is to realize that your deep, inherent worth is not dependent on your posture. When the heavy drops of comparison fall, when you see someone's perfect life online, or recall a conversation where you felt foolish, or worry about a financial lack, allow yourself to bend. This bending is the profound practice of non-resistance. It means, acknowledge the feeling without agreement. Yes, that thought of inadequacy is heavy, and I feel the strain. Surrender to the weight. Do not fight the feeling. Let the rain of self-criticism pull you down, gently. Feel the pressure in your shoulders, your chest, your temples. Trust the deep root. Know that your essential being, your Buddha nature, the jewel, is not located in the fragile tip of the stalk, but in the deep, unmoving root that connects you to the earth. The inferiority complex tells you that if you bend, you will stay broken. But the truth of the bamboo is that the very act of bending, of accepting the pressure, is what allows you to survive it. It is the flexibility, the humility, the ability to temporarily allow the posture of defeat that guarantees your return to wholeness. To deepen this relaxation, consider the story of the quiet, eccentric Zen poet-monk, Ryokan. Ryokan lived a simple life in a small hut on the side of a mountain, often sleeping beneath the pine trees. He was indifferent to fame and wealth, and was universally loved for his childlike purity and complete lack of attachment to possessions or status. One evening, Ryokan returned to his humble hut to find it had been robbed. The thief had taken the few meager things the monk owned. Ryokan sat down and began to contemplate the silence of the empty hut. Later, he discovered that the thief had neglected to take one thing: a beautiful piece of poetry written by Ryokan himself, still hanging on the wall. Ryokan, looking up at the full moon, felt a wave of profound pity for the thief.
who had not realized the true treasure of the moonlit night he was leaving behind. He left a note for the thief. The thief left it behind, the moon at the window. This simple, beautiful gesture embodies the complete release from the need for external validation. The inferiority complex measures itself by what it loses: the stolen achievement, the lost opportunity, the perceived lack. It is attached to the possessions of the self. But Ryokan, standing in his empty, stolen-from hut, did not feel inferior because he lost his possessions. He was entirely rooted in the unpossessable, the moon, the silence, the vast, shining reality of the present moment. He did not seek validation in the things he owned, but in the things he shared with the thief: the light of the moon. The moon at your window is your inherent, uncarved Buddha nature. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be measured. It cannot be compared. To fully relax tonight, gently give up the few meager things you are still clinging to for validation. Let the thief in your mind take them. The achievement you worry is not good enough. Let it go. The social status you strive to maintain. Let it go. The ideal appearance you feel you must project. Let it go. When the robber, the judging mind, leaves your hut empty, what remains? Only the light of the moon, your own essential, luminous reality. This is the place of deep, profound peace. Allow your body to feel the gentle bending of the bamboo. Let the weight of the day's comparisons pull you down, not into despair, but into a humble, restful surrender. And then, feel the gentle spring back, not through striving, but through the deep, natural resilience of your unjudged being. You are the bamboo, flexible, rooted, and utterly whole. You are the empty hut, illuminated by the perfect, unclaimable light of the moon. Rest now, in the stillness that needs nothing and proves nothing. The analogy of the bamboo and the rain speaks directly to the false strength of the ego. The ego, which is the source of the inferiority complex, believes that strength means rigidity, the refusal to bend, the constant need to present an unblemished, perfect facade. But as the metaphor shows, rigidity leads to breaking, while flexibility ensures survival. The oak tree, representing the rigid ego, resists the rain until it can resist no longer, and then its great branch snaps, signifying a major crisis of identity when external pressure becomes overwhelming. The bamboo, however, demonstrates effortless action, or wu wei. It achieves its goal, returning to its upright state not through force, but through perfect adaptation and yielding. When you feel the sting of inferiority, it is because you are internally resisting a judgment or a perceived lack. You are fighting the rain. The thought says, "I am less than," and the ego screams, "No, I must be more." This internal struggle is the true source of your exhaustion. The practice of allowing yourself to bend is the practice of humility in the deepest sense. Not self-abasement, but the recognition that you are not above the forces of life. It is the quiet acknowledgement that sometimes life's pressures are too great to withstand upright, and the wisest choice is simply to yield. In that surrender, you conserve your core energy and protect your deep root. This flexibility is essential because it severs the link between your posture and your worth. The bamboo's worth is not in its height or its straightness. It is in its simple existence. Your worth is not in your current achievement or perceived status. It is in your essential uncarved nature. The pressure of the rain temporarily changes the bamboo's appearance, making it look defeated, but it does not touch its intrinsic quality. Similarly, the pressure of comparison may make you feel inferior, but it cannot make you inferior. Now, let us turn to Ryokan's moon. The moon represents the things in life that are non-proprietary, the things that belong to everyone and therefore cannot be measured or stolen. The inferiority complex is fixated on proprietary value, the things I own, the title I possess, the compliments I receive. These are the meager possessions in the hut. Ryokan's deep realization was that his contentment was not found in protecting his few belongings from the thief, but in sharing the unpossessable luminous reality with the thief. He felt pity because the thief, focused on a few scraps of material value, missed the true treasure of the night. We are often like that thief, desperate to grasp a few fleeting tokens of status, a scrap of praise, a small achievement, while completely ignoring the vast, silent, infinite treasure that is the present moment and the awareness that illuminates it. The moon at the window is the symbol of ultimate self-acceptance. It shines, it is whole, and it makes no effort to be superior to the stars or the earth. It simply is. When you rest in your Buddha nature, you are resting in that moon-like awareness. It is a light that is always available, independent of the outer circumstances of your life. It is the unquantifiable core of your being. To enter the final stage of relaxation, let the emptiness of Ryokan's hut become the emptiness of your mind. Mentally open the door and let the judging mind, the thief, take whatever it wants, your regret, your fear of tomorrow, your memory of embarrassment. Watch it leave, and then simply look around the empty space of your consciousness. What remains is not absence, but fullness of presence. What remains is the realization that the most valuable thing, your capacity for awareness, your life force, your uncarved precious existence, was never on the wall and could never be stolen. The inferiority complex vanishes when the external props that support it are gone. It needs the applause of the crowd, the shine of the trophy, the envy of others. When you fully embrace the quiet, unadorned emptiness of the hut and the humility of the bending bamboo, the complex has no air to breathe. You are giving yourself permission for the deepest surrender, the surrender of the need to matter to the outside world. Tonight, you matter profoundly, simply because you exist. You are a whole, complete, rooted being, perfectly capable of bending without breaking, and illuminated by an inner light that is forever beyond the reach of thieves or critics. Rest now, in the stillness that needs nothing and proves nothing. Feel the cool light of the moon at the window of your heart. You are enough. You are whole. You are home. Resting as the still pond. We now enter the final, deepest phase. Sleep peacefully. We have identified the worry, anchored the calm, and surrendered to relaxation. This stage is about embodying the stillness, allowing the mind and body to merge into a single, unified state of deep rest, free from the chatter of the small self. The feeling of inferiority is, at its core, mental movement, the constant agitation of comparing, judging, and striving. To find true rest, we must become utterly still, not just outwardly, but internally. We must become the still pond, the image we encountered earlier, but now we rest as the pond itself, not just observing the splash. Imagine, for a moment, that your entire being, your body, your consciousness, your emotions, is a vast, ancient, mountain-fed pond, high in the remote peaks of a monastery garden. This pond is sheltered by tall cedars and receives only the purest light of the moon. The surface of this pond is usually ruffled by the movements of the day, the winds of ambition, the ripples of comparison, the tiny disturbances of self-criticism. When the surface is agitated, the pond cannot reflect the world accurately. It reflects fragmented, distorted images, and that distortion is the illusion of inferiority. When the surface is moving, the small self believes it is seeing a flawed, broken reflection. But now, as you lie here, the wind has died down. The agitation of the day has ceased. We practice allowing the pond to settle into its original, non-reactive state. Feel the deep, unmoving stillness of the pond in your body. Your foundation is the bottom of the pond. Feel the absolute stillness of your bones and the weight of your body pressing into the bed. This is your anchor, the part of you that is connected to the eternal earth, utterly unmoving. Your awareness is the deep water, calm, cool, and vast. No thought, no emotion, no memory can penetrate the profound depth of this water. They can only exist on the surface. The surface is your breath. Gentle, rhythmic, the last movement of the day. As you sink deeper, recognize that the goal now is not to stop thoughts, but to recognize thoughts as mere surface phenomena. An anxious thought about a conversation, a fleeting judgment about your worth, a memory of a failure. These are the tiny dust motes or fallen leaves drifting on the surface of the pond. The inferiority complex demands that you take these surface thoughts and dive into them, believing they are the truth of the depths. But the deep water knows better. It knows that its fundamental nature is not the leaf, nor the dust, but the profound, all-containing stillness beneath them. When a thought of self-criticism arises now, instead of reacting or arguing with it, simply watch it float on the surface of the water. Do not dip your finger in. Do not assign it meaning. Allow it to drift naturally towards the quiet, dark edge of your awareness. This practice of non-reaction is the deepest healing for the inferiority complex. The complex relies entirely on your engagement, on your belief that the fleeting criticism is a profound, defining truth. When you simply let it float, you are declaring its ultimate insignificance. You are resting in the wisdom that you are the space that holds the thought, not the thought itself. Imagine an ancient Zen master sitting beside this pond. He does not control the water. He does not filter the leaves. He simply is with the pond. His presence is so still, so patient, that the water naturally calms itself in response. You are that master tonight. You are the stillness that is observing the stillness. Take a slow, deep breath. And as you exhale, imagine the last ripple of the day smoothing completely flat across the water's surface. Inhale. The air is cool and fresh, touching the vast space of your lungs. Exhale. The surface of the pond is perfectly flat, reflecting the pure, dark canopy of the night sky. In this perfect stillness, you realize a profound truth. When the pond is still, it perfectly reflects the entire sky. It does not have to try to be grand. It simply is grand, because it contains the reflection of the infinite. Your inherent worth, your Buddha nature, is the whole vast sky. The moment you stop the self-agitation of comparison and striving, the moment you allow the pond of your mind to settle, you effortlessly reflect the boundless, unquantifiable truth of existence. Your worth is not a small, personal lamp that needs to be constantly adjusted. Your worth is the entire night sky, full of silent, shining stars and the dark, infinite space that holds them. It has always been there, untouched by the ripples of the day. Let your body become heavy and dense, sinking into the truth of the still pond. Let your mind become wide and dark, containing the universe without effort. There is nothing to fear in the dark. There is nothing to achieve in the stillness.
There is only the deep, profound rest that comes from surrendering the small, worried self to the vast, unconditional reality that you truly are. Rest now in the non-reactive calm. Rest in the knowledge that your reflection is perfect because the sky it reflects is infinite. Sink deep into the stillness and let the darkness hold you in its gentle embrace. The final liberation from the
Inferiority complex is the realization that you are not a mirror, but the space that holds the reflection. The small self, fueled by comparison, acts like a mirror, frantically trying to polish itself to catch a better image. But the still pond is not frantic. It simply is. Its clarity, its ability to perfectly reflect the infinite sky, arises not from effort, but from the cessation of effort. This is the central paradox of deep rest. The most powerful form of action is non-action. The pond does not do stillness. It simply is stillness. When the mind ceases its doing, its judging, comparing, striving, it returns to its natural, pure state of stillness. And in that state, its worth is undeniable, because it is reflecting the boundless universe. The deepest layer of the pond is the layer that has never moved. Even when a violent storm raged on the surface, the deepest part of the water remained undisturbed. This deep layer is your Buddha nature, the hidden jewel, the uncarved block. It is the part of you that has never been successfully judged, flawed, or diminished by any life event or external opinion. It is the silent witness, always whole. The true practice of resting as the still pond is unconditional permission. You are granting permission for yourself to be impervious to surface events. The passing thoughts of inferiority are merely leaves on the water. They are allowed to exist, but they are not the substance of the pond. Fundamentally whole, the vastness of the water is never diminished by the floating debris. Your wholeness is never diminished by your flaws or mistakes. Effortlessly beautiful, the pond does not strain to hold the reflection of the stars. You do not need to strain to embody your worth. The reflection simply happens when the surface is clear. The small self thrives on fragmentation. It splits reality into good and bad, into the self it is and the self it should be. The still pond embodies wholeness. It holds the darkness of the depths, the silence of the earth, the gentle movement of the surface, and the infinite light of the sky, all in one unified field. Tonight, let the fragmentation dissolve. Feel the complete integration of your being. Let your hands and feet feel the weight of stillness. Allow the density of your limbs to become a comforting ballast, rooting you to the earth, preventing any possibility of being carried away by the surface winds of worry. Every muscle that releases its tension is a ripple disappearing from the pond's surface. As you sink into the final moments before sleep, imagine the sky you are reflecting. It is not a small personal sky. It is the cosmic sky. It contains the infinite possibility of the future and the entire sweep of the past. By resting as the still pond, you are resting as the container of infinity. The inferiority complex, which is a feeling of being small and limited, is utterly annihilated by this vastness. How can something that contains infinity
be small. This is the
ultimate, nonverbal answer to all self-doubt. You are the universe, witnessing itself. There is no more seeking. There is no more striving. There is no more comparing. The effort of the small self has ceased. The two hands have fallen silent. The beggar has found the jewel. The bamboo has sprung back upright. The frog has splashed, and the ripples have disappeared. All that remains is the deep, unmoving, boundless truth of your existence. Let your mind melt into the dark, velvety expanse of the mountain night. You are the stillness that knows itself. You are the pond, and you are the sky. Sink now, without fear, into the certainty of your own infinite, unjudged peace. Sleep peacefully. The Silent Sutra of the Stars. We continue to dissolve the small, striving self, allowing the stillness of the pond to deepen into the ultimate, boundless reality, the vastness of the night sky, where the Silent Sutra of the Stars is endlessly proclaimed. The inferiority complex is the mind's final, desperate attempt to hold on to a separate, isolated identity. It insists, I am separate from the sky. I am just a speck of dirt, not a star. I am an individual failure, distinct from the perfection of the whole. But the core teaching of the Mahayana tradition, the foundation of Zen, is that the separation is an illusion. You are not a separate speck. You are an inextricable piece of the whole, defined not by your boundaries, but by your boundlessness. Imagine now that your awareness has expanded far beyond the still pond. You are looking up into the infinite, black velvet of the night sky. The stars, the nebulae, the endless space. This is the true scale of your being, unmeasurable and vast. In this moment, the inferiority complex, that tiny, persistent voice of self-doubt, is seen not as a personal tragedy, but as a momentary shadow cast by a single, flickering thought, far below, near the horizon. It has no substance against the silence of 1,000 galaxies. To bring this vastness down to a human level, we return to the quiet wisdom of a simple Zen interaction, often used to instruct students on the total release from attachment to self-view, even attachment to good intentions. This is the story of the monk who carried the woman. Two Zen monks, Tanzan and Aikido, were traveling together along a muddy road, thick with the heavy rains of spring. As they approached a village crossing, they came upon a beautiful young woman standing helplessly, unable to cross the street because of the deep mud and the flowing water. It was strictly against the monastic rules for monks to touch women, let alone carry them. The younger monk, Aikido, immediately averted his eyes, already preparing a mental lecture on the dangers of temptation and the importance of discipline. He judged her situation, and he judged the need to avoid it. But the elder monk, Tanzan, without a moment's hesitation, walked straight up to the woman. He lifted her gently in his arms, carried her across the worst of the muddy road, and set her down safely on the other side. He then returned to the path, dusted his robes, and the two monks continued their journey in silence. They walked on for many hours. Aikido, the younger monk, grew increasingly agitated. He was burdened by the memory of the event. He was judging Tanzan's transgression, judging his own inability to speak up, and judging the entire situation. The internal conflict simmered until finally he could not bear the silence any longer. "Brother Tanzan," Aikido burst out, his voice tense with suppressed anxiety. "We monks are forbidden to go near women, let alone touch them. Why did you carry that young woman across the mud?" Tanzan stopped and looked at his younger companion, his face gentle and calm. "I set the woman down hours ago," Tanzan replied softly. "Are you still carrying her?" Let the profound simplicity of that final question wash over you. Are you still carrying her? The woman in this story is the inferiority complex. The muddy road is the challenge of life, where we inevitably encounter feelings, situations, and people that we are taught to avoid or judge. Aikido, the younger monk, represents the mind that clings to its own judgment of the situation. He carried the thought of the woman and the thought of the rule violation for miles. His physical journey was easy, but his internal journey was agonizing because he was burdened by a heavy conceptual self. The self that judged, the self that worried about rules, the self that felt superior for his abstinence and then inferior for his silence. He had set down the physical weight, but he was still carrying the conceptual weight. Tanzan, on the other hand, represents the Buddha nature in action, total spontaneous presence without attachment. He performed the action necessary in the moment, an act of pure, selfless compassion. But the moment the action was complete, the concept of the action, the memory of the woman, the worry about the rule, all of it was immediately set down. His mind was empty. He walked on, light and free, having completely dissolved the event back into the moment it occurred. The inferiority complex thrives on carrying the past. You made a mistake 5 years ago. Are you still carrying it? Someone criticized you this morning. Are you still carrying it? You feel less accomplished than your peer. Are you still carrying that comparison? Every feeling of inadequacy you have right now is simply a thought from the past that you are still carrying. It is a memory that the mind has replayed and attached the heavy weight of a permanent judgment to. Tonight, as you sink towards sleep, we practice the radical, immediate release of Tanzan. With every soft out-breath, imagine that you are setting down the weight you have been carrying for hours, days, or even years. Feel the heavy burden of the inferior me lift from your chest. You are not required to hold on to this past judgment for even one more second. The thought of your failure is the woman. Set her down. The memory of your weakness is the woman. Set her down. The worry that you are not good enough is the woman. Set her down. Let the final judgment of the day dissolve into the vast open space of the night sky. The Silent Sutra. This sutra is written in the language of non-duality. There is no permanent me to be inferior, and no permanent you to be superior. There is only the boundless, continuous flow of existence, unburdened by past thoughts. Allow your entire body to surrender to the truth of Tanzan, the compassionate, unattached self. You have carried the weight long enough. It is time to be utterly light, utterly free. Just breathe. Let go. Set it down. Sink into the knowledge that you are whole, complete, and perfectly free in this very moment, untouched by the shadows you left behind on the muddy road of the past. The story of the two monks is the ultimate lesson in spiritual hygiene. Aikido's internal agitation was not caused by the external event, but by his attachment to his own self-image as a pure, rule-following monk. He felt compelled to judge Tanzan's action to affirm his own perceived superiority, and when that internal affirmation failed, he was left with anxiety. His burden was the conceptual framework of his identity. The inferiority complex is precisely this conceptual framework. It is the heavy scaffolding of rules, comparisons, and expectations that you carry around, believing that if you drop them, you will collapse. But Tanzan proves the opposite. The moment you drop the concepts, you become light, flexible, and fully present. The act of setting down the woman is the instantaneous recognition that the idea of the woman is not the reality of the woman. The thought of your inadequacy is just a thought, a fleeting electric impulse. It is only the weight you assign to that thought that makes it real. Tanzan's mind was operating in pure, compassionate reality. Aikido's mind was operating in burdened, judgmental concept. Tonight, we commit to being a Tanzan to our own past. Every memory of a mistake, a failure, or an embarrassment is a heavy figure standing on the muddy road. The natural human tendency is to pick up that figure, to re-engage with the shame, replay the mistake, and internalize the judgment. This is the act of carrying. The simple, profound freedom comes when you stop and realize the event is over. The mistake belongs to a moment that has vanished. The judgment belongs to a person who is not you. The burden is entirely an optional choice you make right now in the stillness of your bed. Imagine the stars of the Silent Sutra proclaiming this truth. There is no continuity in the self that makes mistakes. The you who failed last week is as gone as the rain that fell on the muddy road. All that remains is the ever-fresh, unburdened awareness of this moment. The inferiority complex is a memory disorder. It is the faulty memory system that insists on dragging yesterday's conceptual garbage into today's pure awareness. When you consciously set down the burden, you are correcting this faulty memory, declaring that the present moment is sovereign and inviolable. The true source of the inferiority complex is the desire for spiritual profit. Aikido's desire to gain spiritual superiority by following the rules. We seek a profit of worth by being better than others. Tanzan demonstrated that the only true gain is the loss of self. The moment he lost the attachment to his identity as a rule-following monk, he gained freedom and compassion. Let the final outbreath you take before sleep be the ultimate act of letting go of the ledger. Let go of the need to calculate your worth, balance your achievements against your failures, or check your rank against others. The entire account is closed, dissolved by the vastness of the Silent Sutra. The Silent Sutra of the stars is the cosmic reassurance that your essence is the unwritten truth. It is beyond words, beyond rules, beyond comparison. The space between the galaxies does not judge the light of a star. It contains it. Your awareness is that vast space. Sink now into the boundless reality of the night. Feel the entire weight of your past, the mistakes, the shames, the worries, lift and dissolve into the infinite, non-judgmental dark. You are utterly light. You are utterly free. You are the space that holds the stars, and the stars proclaim your unconditioned, eternal worth. Rest in the knowledge that you have set the woman down. You are finally home. Now, just this soft breath. We arrive now at the final descent into deep, restorative sleep. We have navigated the worry, found the calm, practiced the relaxation, and released the heavy burdens of the past. In this final, sacred moment, we bring our entire awareness back to the most simple, most profound truth. Just this soft breath. The entire practice of letting go of the inferiority complex
can be summarized as the surrender of the small self back into the great reality. The small self is always tense, always striving, always comparing. It holds its breath, waiting for approval. The great reality, however, is effortless, vast, and entirely non-judgmental. It breathes you. As you lie here, feel the full, magnificent weight of your body settling into the mattress, supported by the earth. Allow the final edges of your consciousness to soften and blur. There are no more stories to hear, no more koans to solve, and no more worthiness to prove. Your only task now is to simply be breathed. Let your breath become utterly natural, soft, and quiet. So quiet that it becomes less of a sound and more of a feeling, a subtle, internal rhythm that rocks you gently towards sleep. The inferiority complex often manifests as a tightness in the body, a clenched jaw, a knot in the stomach, tension in the shoulders. This is the body preparing for a fight, ready to defend the small self against imagined
comparison or criticism. Tonight, we release this vigilance completely. We give the body permission to stand down, to surrender the fight. Gently scan your body, moving through these areas of holding, and with each exhalation, whisper a quiet word of release. Your forehead and eyes. Feel the tiny muscles around your eyes soften, smoothing the brow. The effort of seeing and judging is released. Let go. Your jaw. Unclench your teeth. Let your tongue rest heavily on the floor of your mouth. The effort of speaking and defending is released. Let go. Your neck and shoulders. Imagine the last heavy burden of the day dissolving into the pillow. The effort of carrying burdens is released. Let go. Your chest and belly. Allow your stomach to become soft and yielding, no longer holding in feelings of inadequacy. The effort of striving and anxiety is released. Let go. Your hands and feet. Feel the weight and stillness of your extremities. No more reaching, no more running. The effort of doing is released. Let go. You are now the ultimate uncarved block, a mass of simple, sinking weight, entirely perfect in your stillness. In this state of total physical surrender, we make one final compassionate agreement with ourselves. This agreement dissolves the final remnants of the comparing mind. The complete acceptance of the self, just as it is in this final moment. The self that feels inferior is the self that believes it needs to be somewhere else or something else. But true acceptance is the realization that right here, right now, there is nothing missing. You are whole. Your past is gone, and the future has not arrived. There is only this silent, breathing, resting presence. If a lingering thought of not enough tries to surface, do not engage with its content. Do not argue that you are enough. That is still a comparison. Instead, simply turn your attention fully and completely to the sensation of the next breath. Feel the air entering your nostrils, cool and refreshing. Feel it warming and softening as it exits. This gentle, effortless cycle is the entire, perfect reality of your existence. This breath is not inferior. This breath is not superior. This breath simply is. And in this simple, unadorned act of breathing, you are participating fully in the vast, continuous life of the universe. There is no separation. There is no lack. You are the space.
You are the stillness. You are the breath. Let your consciousness drift now, away from the edges of your thoughts and towards the deep, soft center of your quiet heart. Imagine your mind is simply resting like a tiny smooth stone at the bottom of the stillest pond, warm and heavy. Every word we have shared tonight, the farmer's wisdom, the silent pond, the uncarved block, the moon at the window, is now held within you, not as a memory to be recalled, but as a deep internal release. You have set down the burden of having to be someone. Tonight, you are simply the life that sleeps. Let the final weight of your eyelids seal you in this profound and perfect peace. You are supported. You are loved. You are utterly, unconditionally worthy. Sleep now, softly. Sleep soundly. Sink. Sink deeper. And rest in the truth of your vast, unjudged self. The final act of surrender is the realization that the breath is the border between the small self and the vast self. When the breath is held, tight, and anxious, it signifies the small self desperately trying to control the uncontrollable flow of life. When the breath softens, deepens, and becomes effortless, it signifies the small self dissolving into the vast, non-striving, non-judgmental reality. We are returning to the Tao of the breath, the natural, spontaneous, unforced rhythm that sustains you without any intervention from your ego or your sense of inadequacy. The inferiority complex requires constant internal commentary and struggle to survive. The breath offers no commentary. It simply offers life. As you focus on the simple sensation of the air moving in and out, you are performing the ultimate anti-comparison ritual. The breath cannot be compared. Is this breath better than the last one? Is it worse than the one coming next? The question is absurd. Each breath is a complete, perfect, and necessary event in itself. In turning your awareness fully to the breath, you enter a sphere of existence that is entirely free from the need for external measurement. The tightness in your body is essentially undigested experience. The knots in your muscles are the places where you held on to the fear of failure, the sting of criticism, or the anxiety of comparison. By whispering "let go" with the exhale, you are not just relaxing a muscle. You are releasing the memory, the judgment, and the fear associated with that physical holding. You are physically setting down the woman on the muddy road one last time. Feel the soft, silent rhythm now, and recognize that this rhythm is the signature of your unconditioned worth. The universe does not ask your qualifications before granting you the next breath. It does not judge your actions yesterday before allowing the air to enter your lungs tonight. The continuous, unconditional flow of the breath is the most primal, tangible proof that you are inherently worthy, regardless of any external factor. The moment you are born, you are granted this rhythm, and it is a gift that is never withdrawn until the very end. Allow your mind to become completely absorbed in this truth. Let the boundaries of your body soften. Imagine the skin melting, the muscles loosening, the bones sinking. You are transitioning from being a rigid, defined structure to a soft, permeable field of awareness. In this soft field, the inferiority complex cannot exist because it relies on boundaries. I am here, and I am smaller than the boundary of my worth. But as you rest, you realize that your awareness is boundless. It extends far beyond your skin, merging with the space of the room, the silence of the night, and the vast expanse of the Silent Sutra. Sink deeper into the truth that there is nothing left to achieve tonight.
The goal of this journey was not to make you a superior person, but to help you cease the exhausting effort of being a small, inferior person. The goal was simply to return you to your natural, restful state. The final word of release is trust. Trust the stillness. Trust the breath. Trust the darkness. Trust the inherent perfection of the life that is breathing you. Let your consciousness now gently slide away from the language of thought and into the language of sensation. Feel the pillow supporting your head, the blanket covering your body, the deep, heavy stillness in your core. The comparing mind is now utterly silent because it has nothing left to compare. It has surrendered its striving to the effortless rhythm of the whole. You are not an incomplete project. You are not a problem awaiting a solution. You are the entirety of the moment, breathing itself. Rest now, in this absolute, non-judgmental presence. You are safe. You are whole. You are perfectly, beautifully, simply here. Sleep deeply. Sink. Let go completely. You are the soft breath, and the soft breath is the infinite life.